Yeah, that's been honestly one of my favorite things to learn so far about the NIL. I'm going to say NIL and student athletes, our eyes, at least with the athletes that I work with that I see, eyes have been opened a ton. A lot of it could be because right now we're dealing with football season, and our football athletes are obviously in season. It's fall, and with recruiting and at the college level, that's just so different than most other sports. Maybe basketball can compare to it, but with football, what's going on with the NIL and what these athletes are required to do is impressive. The reason that I'm really becoming a big fan of it is because it taps into the creativity that these athletes have. It's pretty much creating their entrepreneurial path early, and they're able to leverage what they're good at, what they're currently good at. And it not only challenges them to be successful on the field and put the work in on the field, but also outside of that, it's content creation, it's personal brand awareness, it's networking, marketing, it's maturity, working with businesses and companies, being a partner. It's really cool to learn this. There's somebody, there's a football player, I think for Boise State, is Ashton Jeffrey. That's been a cool story to watch. He's a running back. He's having an outstanding year. He's leading the country in touchdowns by a lot. His social media presence, just I think this past week, I think his Instagram following went up by 200%. From the beginning of 2024, they say that his following is up over 1,500%. So what that tells me is not only is he producing on the field, but he's also put in the work with his content creation and getting his message and his brand out there. Outside of that, he's started his own clothing brand, and he's also signed an NIL deal with a very successful jewelry company, where now he's starting to sell his name and image and likeness and his jerseys and make some income from that. With student athletes now, for a long time, social media was there as a big part of the life, but the ability to leverage what you're doing, the product you're putting out on your playing field or court, and make it appealing to local businesses or local companies that are in your area, it gives an advantage to student athletes, but also some of these universities that are in, where the university is everything. You think about some of these Midwest schools, Wisconsin, Nebraska, maybe more Nebraska, Dakotas, where the college is everything. And now these businesses have an opportunity to market and invest in student athletes, and the exposure for their business is magnified. Like the example we just used. I mean, you're, as a jewelry company, now you have a student athlete with a following that's continuously growing, and he's reaching a totally different demographic. It makes a lot of sense for a company to dive into that. And that's what's been fun and interesting. And I think we're so new into the whole NIL because a lot of people are still trying to figure out how to play ball. And there's some good companies out there that I know of that I work with that are partnering with athletic departments and universities and making a big difference by doing that. But my message and what I'm working with now specifically, I'm getting a little bit more into the business side of it with some of my network who are now starting to invest in that. But where I see it most is from the student athlete side. And it's happening at the high school level a little bit. You have some advisors, and I highly recommend to have a lawyer or anybody, on your side with some legal background, because there are a lot of people who are trying to take advantage of this who might not be the most educated in the field. And there are some great firms out there that are really doing a lot with high school student athletes and college student athletes. But I think now this adds another dynamic to what we talk to our high level Division I student athletes. We spend a little bit more time. It kind of, the NIL world rears its head a little earlier to them. I see it happening at all levels, but the grasp and majority of what we see is at the Division I level. And I think it'd be foolish to, if you're highly recruited there, to not explore and at least look at that universities and that program's stance on NILs, and if they do anything or if there's any other current athletes in that program that are having success with NILs. Because like I stated earlier, there are universities who are investing in this to best guide their athletes when they are there, and to have resources and people who can answer those questions, and then also do some groundwork to create exposure for the university's athletes. Those things are huge. And I truly believe at this point you do yourself a disservice to not at least know where they're standing in it and what they're doing to help you do that. So for me personally, I'm becoming more and more of a fan of it. I haven't seen too much of the negative side. I think it's still really early. Some companies and some athletes are getting incredibly creative, but the athletes that we're seeing now come up through it, they grew up in content digital creation. That's what they know, from YouTube to Instagram to Facebook. These student athletes now are better than people in my generation and older are, and which is a good thing, because I think that's what leads a lot of companies to look for this. But also, if you've been doing it your whole entire life and you enjoy doing it, leverage it and take a real serious look at it. And for the business side of it and the entrepreneurial side of it, I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful way to get exposure, to get in front of a whole demographic that you might not necessarily reach, especially in the traditional ways of marketing to that demographic. So when you have a name that's growing on social media and household names, it makes a lot of sense to partner up with that athlete and have the ability to also touch that reach. So a long way to answer the question. I think it's great. I think we need it, and I really push for those who are creative to get out there and continue to explore it and make those investments and make that impact in it.